It was a pretty quick ramp up, actually. I was focused on another project, which ultimately didn't happen, and then this came in, and it was one of those things that I'd heard about. I'd heard that this great script existed, and because Mark Wahlberg is with the same agency as me, and so I'd heard about it internally, and I kind of resisted reading it because I wanted to focus on this other thing. And then I came to it and I read it and I just fell in love with it. And knowing Mark was already going to do it was a huge reason. First of all, actually, why I read it in the first place. Otherwise, I don't think I ever would have taken the time. And then when I read it and thought this is just a perfect combination. It's a really rare beast in modern Hollywood, I think, because it's a character-driven piece rather than a plot-driven story. And there's very little cause and effect. It's very much a freewheeling story about a man searching for his own identity and coming up with a plan to kind of, in a way, expose who he truly is. A man trapped in a kind of gilded cage of privilege and opulence who uses the means of gambling to actually escape his past and become a true individual, a guy outside of the system. So kind of like a Randall P. McMurphy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's a true outsider who's sort of raging against the machine and looking for his individuality. And it's a throwback. For me, it's a throwback to the great American movies of the 70s. It's a really appealing character in many ways because he gets to do and say the things that I think we all would like to. But it doesn't necessarily make for a particularly likable character. And I think that's what's so great about what we have as an opportunity, because we have such a likable actor in Mark Wahlberg, and then combined with this character who's so nihilistic and just has that ability to sort of, get under people's skin and call people for what they truly are. It's kind of a Clark Kent story in a way, because by day he's this literature professor working in a Californian university that is unnamed, and then by night he's this sort of owl nocturnal animal that kind of inhabits and explores these very hidden, behind closed doors worlds of both very high society, elitist, exclusive gambling houses up in the Hollywood Hills, and then also the much more underworld Korean sort of criminal enterprises that exist in Koreatown and downtown that go on literally underground. These three guys, one is a elderly Korean man called Mr. Lee. The other one, and he's played by Alvin Ing, and the other one is played by Michael K. Williams, who plays this sort of African-American, very politicized, sort of Black Panther type of the 21st century, a character called Neville Baraka. He's a guy who has fingers in many pies, and he runs a limo company, and he also runs a brothel, but he's also first and foremost a moneylender, like the other guys. And then there's Frank, played by John Goodman, who's much more of a kind of a sort of unmade bed of a guy who's lived 5 different lives, and is a sort of he's a bit of a casualty, but he's a sort of like an elder Jewish Frank Sinatra, basically, and he's a thug as well. But he's the third of the three, and they're kind of like the wolves up in the hills, and gradually they start to descend upon Jim. When the time starts ticking and he's not paying them back, they start to close in on him. Amy's much more seeing the glass half full, and she's curious about everything. So we've created this character with Brie Larson, who plays Amy, of a girl whose inquisitiveness sort of is manifested in her kind of lifting things out of different environments. She's not so much a thief, but more of a procurer of different objects. So when we find her in her apartment, she's not that different from Amélie, the character in the French film, who this sort of very quirky individual girl who lives in a not so much a fantasy world, but in her own very particularly created world. And she falls in love with Jim primarily because she sees a kindred spirit, even though he's somebody who may not necessarily be the most attractive of people in many ways. And they have this interaction at the college on day one where he's incredibly exposing of her. Like, he really pulls all of her own insecurities out of her right in front of the class. And it both shocks her and rocks her, but it also it brings her closer to him, and she starts to ask questions of him and find out more about him. And then when invited, she gets sucked into his world and goes along for the ride. This in particular, I think he's lost close to 60 pounds, and we wanted to kind of create a wolf-like sort of physicality about him. And he's now also at that age where I think, you know, he has this extraordinary character face. He's still obviously still very much the handsome movie star that he's always been, but he has this amazing kind of haunted look. When the skinnier he gets, the more you see the life in the eyes rather than everything around it. And I think that's just done us so many favors in terms of what we can then do with this character, because he's disappeared into the role. He's not the guy from Transformers. He's much more the guy that basically is sort of just completely been enveloped by the character of Jim Bennett. It's a very funny film, you know. It's a very funny film, and it's a very dramatic film, and it's a very moving film, and it's I hope a film that everybody, whether they be male or female, can relate to, in the sense that we all, in our own way, are all trying to figure out who we are, and we all do that in various ways. And some of us are happy with our lot and carry on as we've been prescribed, and there are those that make the choice not to, for better or for worse. But I think regardless of what choices we make, it's always fascinating watching somebody really push the envelope and kind of stand up to the man and see what he can get.